Yeah, I don't have a PowerPoint for you. I'm Kendall Nichols, Director of Research for the North Dakota Soybean Council. What I do is I manage the research granting system and go through all the grants, and we work extensively with NDSU and other researchers. Soybean is quite a success story in North Dakota. Imagine 20 years ago there wasn't hardly any soybeans in North Dakota, and 3 years ago we actually replaced wheat as the top crop grown in North Dakota. We have fallen back to second now. We are at about little over 6 million acres of soybean production in North Dakota, and in Cass County, actually Cass County has been the #1 county in the nation for total production or acres of soybeans. So we're kind of a hotbed of the north. Nationally, we are #4 in acres in North Dakota and #9 in production. We may have fallen back to 10 because of last year, but we're doing pretty well. But I do the Director of Research. We look at a number of research projects, and I want to highlight some of the research projects that we fund. We fund about $1.6 million in research annually, and one of the things we're looking at is, you heard a little bit about cover crops from the gentleman from Iowa. Out at Carrington, Dr. Greg Andres, Mike Osley, they're looking at rye and cover crop as a use for rye. When do you kill the rye? Do you kill it before you plant it? Do you kill it after you plant it? And that varies throughout the state. The last week when we were out visiting with Greg, they're finding probably 5 to 7 days before you plant the rye on average, but it depends on if you got very wet and you want the rye to use up the moisture, then you can kill it. You can plant green and kill it after you've planted it. If you're in western North Dakota where it's drier, you're not going to want to let it go that long. You'll use it to keep your crop in place and then kill it before. Visual ratings for IDC. We don't have any IDC here. It's all over in North Dakota. All the yellow crops you see early in the year, visual ratings. Dr. Ted Helms has run this for many years. He looks at all the different varieties and gives you an idea which of the varieties that you can put on your hardest soils. Alternative soybean production managements on acid soils. I never thought I'd hear that we'd have acid soils in North Dakota, but southwestern North Dakota with the no-till, the application of nitrogen on the ground, the soils in the top 2 to 4 inches are turning acid, down to 4.5 in cases. They're actually looking at liming. Now we're trying to get a handle on how much lime to put down and how effective that is. So we are looking at emerging problems and in western North Dakota. One of the things that we're also looking at is Gautam Pradhan in western North Dakota is looking at populations. He actually has found that he can drop the population of soybeans to around 90 to 100,000 plants per acre instead of 150, 175 normally in that dry soil, and retain the yields, and actually it looks like it's more profitable actually than the higher populations in that semi-arid growing conditions. We also are looking at, not that we have any herbicide-resistant weeds in North Dakota, but we're working with the National Genotyping Lab. They're looking at a way to test for identification of herbicide resistance in weeds so that we can pull the sample, they can test it and find out if it's resistant immediately without having to grow it a couple, 3 years. Managing salinity with cover crops, so a whole system response. Dr. Kaylee Gash at NDSU is looking at cover crops and how can we mitigate the salinity that is causing some of the production problems. Soybean is very sensitive to salt, and we need to get that salt down. So how do we mitigate that? What type of cover crops can we put on? Does it make a difference on which cover crop and how many years? Can you bring this crop back into production? Other things we're looking at, soybean cyst nematode. Soybean cyst nematode is the biggest robber of soybean yields in the United States. It is, if you're in Ransom or Richland County, southwestern North Dakota, you've got SCN, whether you want it or not, and it moves throughout the state. We got Dr. Guping Yang is looking at different ways to look at different cover crops that may help reduce the levels of SCN. Dr. Sam Markell, for many years, well, I shouldn't say many years, for the last few years, we have funded sampling program where the North Dakota Soybean Council actually pays for the samples to be sent in and gets analysis. Dr. Sam Markell has a great map of North Dakota that shows where soybean cyst nematode is and the levels. Dr. Berlin Nelson, unfortunately, he has been looking for sudden death syndrome in North Dakota, and he found it. And it's not a good find. It's down in Richland County. He has found it there, but we suspect it's moving. Sudden death syndrome is a disease that has confounded Iowa, the I-states for years. But we want to get a handle so we can manage it. We're looking at different varieties. And we want everybody out looking for it. Other things that we do, we talk about new uses. When Jean was up here, she talked about new uses. You know, we had a little thing happen with China this last couple of years, and you know what that did to the soybean market. So we're looking at new uses. One of the new uses that we funded a few years ago was soybean-based dust retardant for use on roads. This is just about coming to commercialization now. Jim Barr up at NDSU's developed it. It's gone into mass testing now. We actually got a couple areas that are trying to use it. We're also looking at this product. It has a unique reaction with asphalt. So if you've got ground up asphalt where we ground up all these asphalt roads, this will actually bond with it and makes hard roads. So we're looking at some of the aspects for that. Other things that we're looking at is we have Bornoff at NDSU is looking at how can we use plastic to make, how can we use soybean oil to make plastic that cover the meats, that soft wrap that goes over meats. That's a big use. It doesn't degrade, but he's looking at how we can use soybeans into that. But we're open to a number of different things. One of the things that's kind of exciting is we also have a project where there's a protein that seems to have helps reduce cancer. So they're looking at breeding that into soybeans. So we run the whole gamut in research. We're coming up with the research funding again for this last year. And one of the things we do is we work with the farmers to see what type of production problems they're having. And we visit with them each year. I just got off a Zoom meeting, that's why I was a little late. We had 9 farmers on there talking about some of the production issues that they have and try and focus our research on what will give the greatest return on investment. So that's what the checkoff dollars are doing for our North Dakota soybean farmers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. Let's hear it up. Give it up for him.